I grew up in England, and we only had one set of relatives that was exciting in any way. My mother's youngest sister was named Dilys, and her husband was Bill. And Bill was the epitome of the dark, handsome, tall man, and he was a musician. He played trumpet, he played the bagpipes, and a couple of things in between. So the two of them toured around. They went to all over the country. They even played on cruise ships. So to the rest of our family, this was our glamorous, adventurous family members. Well, a few years later, my family moved to the U.S., and as a kid, I overheard mumbled conversations about something had gone wrong, and my aunt had moved back into her parents' house. So I knew that they were no longer together. And a couple years later after that, my aunt got remarried, and she did marry someone who was definitely not a Bill and led a kind of regular life like the rest of us. When I got to be a teenager, I went over to England and I got to spend time with my aunt. And she said that the reason the marriage had collapsed was because she was young and immature, and that Bill always attracted all of these young fans around after they played, and she couldn't handle that. So she'd gotten upset and gotten jealous and gone back to her parents' house. She was upset that Bill never really tried to win her back, that he just kind of signed the divorce papers after a couple of years and they went their separate ways. And as I got to know my aunt more, I knew that Bill was the love of her life, and that even though she was happily married with kids, this was the person that she really felt the most bonded to. And I met her years later when we went over to England, and she had found out that actually Bill had tried to contact her. He had written letters, he had called, he had done all these things, but her father thought it was in her best interest not to tell her. So they never gave her the letters, they never gave her the messages, and so Bill never knew that she never got them, and she never knew that he had tried to contact her. Meanwhile, my mom had found out that Bill's sister had moved to Long Island and opened a music store. And she contacted the sister and said, Dilys would really like to talk to Bill. And another overprotective relative, the sister said, I don't think so. I'm not going to give you that information because Bill has been remarried, moved on. We should let the past be the past. So if you fast forward many years, my aunt is now in her 60s, and I am preparing to get remarried in Philadelphia, and I'm setting up a wedding reception. It was just going to be a big party. I'm looking through all of these ads, and I see an ad for someone who would play bagpipes at your wedding, and his name was the same name as my uncle. So I called thinking that can't possibly be true, but it was my Uncle Bill. And he had moved to the U.S. And he was really excited to be connected. He was divorced, and he remembered us all quite fondly. And so I told my aunt about this, and she was coming over to this reception. And so the two of them were going to get to meet and reconnect at this reception. So this was like a Hallmark movie. Here they are, after all these years, they get together, and they really have a great time at the wedding. My aunt goes back to England, and Bill continues to call her. And then he decides to go over to England and spend more time with her. But the more he starts to spend time with her, the more my aunt starts to realize that maybe she wasn't so young and naive as she thought, that Bill really wasn't the person that she had been building up all these years. So she kind of looked and thought, well, yeah, he really isn't. He's looking for someone because he needs somebody, because he's between marriages, because he's been married several times, and she seemed to be a convenient person. So she starts over weeks to realize, I was probably right to leave him when I was young, because this is not the person I thought he was. So I think my story is to tell you that you get second chances, but second chances come with consequences. And not all second chances are happy endings. And I've always wanted to ask my aunt, but haven't, would you have rather never seen him again and remembered him as the love of your life? Or are you glad that you found out that you made the right decision when you were a young person? Because second chances can go either way. Thank you.